right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live. You may start the meeting.
All right, I'd like to call to order, excuse me, the Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, June 18th. We'll start with roll call.
Chair Hutt, Vice Chair Dennison,
Present?
Commissioners Catalano,
Here.
Dallas, Desai,
Here.
Pevsner, and Spears.
Present.
All right, we can move on to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we will move on to the approval of the minutes of the June 4th, 2020 Planning Commission. Are there any comments, edits?
I have 3 items.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, on line 117, and this is not mine, but I noticed it on Commissioner Desai's line 117, where the pronoun says she. I believe it should say he, but refers to Mr. Desai. Change she to he. Manish, you want to look at that and just concur with me?
I think it's referring to Commissioner Dallas. It says Commissioner Dallas agreed with Commissioner Desai as she likes the project and what is being attempted.
Okay.
So I think it's referring back to her.
It's fine. It's fine the way it is. All right. Then I have two of mine. The simple one is on line 188. It really should say that I inquired as to the historic designation status of 94 North Baldwin. Not really the project. I mean, project's a long time ago, but I was really inquiring about the historic designation status of that property. Now, the complicated one on line 93, but I think it's important that it's stated correctly. So bear with me if you would for a minute. He stated based on code, the proposed project is actually 6 bedrooms and would therefore trigger 3 covered parking spaces, and it shouldn't then say in just fire code requirements specifically, let's say that it would trigger that rooms, or specifically just say that rooms that are labeled as den and rec room are still technically counted as bedrooms by the building code and should be counted as such. Here, they do not comply for code requirements to be open enough to be other than bedrooms. Should be counted as such. I know that's a mouthful, but that's really what's important to put on the record.
We got that.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other edits or changes?
Line 191, there's a word affordable. I don't think it goes with what's happening at 751 Oakcrest Drive. I think it's just, there was an insertion there. So I think it should probably be struck.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we got that.
Any other corrections? All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept those as edited.
Also
So
move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those recusing themselves? Aye. I was not at that meeting. Motion carries. Next is the council liaison report. Is the mayor here to talk with us? All right, then we will, just in time. Mayor, thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear anything you have for us.
Okay, well, I don't really have anything to say at the moment.
All right. We appreciate you joining and thanks for being here. At this time, we will take community input, or I guess, did we only accept community input via email, Vincent?
No, we also can accept live input, and we can go ahead and display the screen that shows the contact information, and we'll pause for a moment.
All right, any of the general public who would like to address the Planning Commission concerning an item that is not on the agenda? We welcome your participation. When addressing the commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. Please keep your comments to no more than 5 minutes so we can assure an orderly and timely meeting. Copies of the agenda are available online. State legislation does limit the commission's ability to take action on specific requests. We can only address things that have been on the agenda 72 hours prior to the meeting. No action or discussion may be undertaken by the Planning Commission on any item if not posted on the agenda, except that commissioners or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public, or a commissioner or staff liaison may ask a question for clarification or make a brief report on his or her own activities. A commissioner or the commission itself may provide a reference to staff to report back to the commission at a subsequent meeting concerning any matter, or may direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. If somebody's trying to speak in public comment, we're having a hard time hearing you.
At this point, there are currently no callers for public comment.
All right. With that, we will move on to a disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. Commissioner Desai, do you want to start?
Yes, I did not visit either of the sites on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Spears? You're on mute, sir.
I visited both sites, and at the site on Oak Crest, I was approached by a neighbor and who presented me with a lot of questions, and I directed them to put it in writing and send it to the planning department so that it can make, and I believe part of it made a email that was distributed to the members of the commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Catalano?
Yes, I did not go to the job on North Oak Grove because I will be recusing myself from that item on the project at on Oak Crest. I went to the site today. I did run into the neighbor who shares the driveway with the applicant with that property. The applicant pointed out to me in person the items that actually are on the email, I believe is from him and his wife. We had no discussion. He pointed them out to me. I looked, and we did not discuss anything.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Pevsner?
He's on mute.
Commissioner Pevsner, you have your computer muted, your audio.
Commissioner, I apologize for interrupting. We do have one caller that joined right when we closed the public comment. I will let you advise if you would like me to bring them on to provide their comments.
Yeah, why don't we finish out with the public hearing and disclosure first, and then we'll go back to that agenda item.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pevsner, it looks like you're off mute now if you'd like to give your disclosure. Though we are unable to hear you. I guess we'll come back to Commissioner Pevsner if we end up being able to hear him. I did visit both sites. I did not run into anybody at the Oakcrest site. I did on Grove run into a neighbor across the street who had definitive opinions about how much the process has changed since he built his house in 1973.
Wow.
Yeah. But did not have any interaction with the owner of the site.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Pevsner, going one last try here.
Committee members, I believe Commissioner Pevsner may be trying to join as call-in user 1. Vincent, would it be okay to allow that user in the chat as the commissioner?
Yeah, hello?
Yes, is this, who's
Yep.
speaking?
This is Commissioner Pevsner.
Okay,
So I ran by the one site near Sunnyside, but I did not go to the other house that was the return project up on Hoke Hill.
All right, thank you. With that, we can revert to community input if you'd like to put that call through.
Okay, I will patch through. Give me just 1 second here. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. We are currently taking public comment for items not on the agenda. You are currently live. If you are watching our meeting online or on TV, please mute your feed to avoid feedback. You will have 5 minutes to provide your comment. You may proceed.
Yeah,
Caller?
we live on Grove. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Unless somebody's updated something recently, we did try to go through the city's website and see the plans for what was going to go on Grove Street, but all we were able to understand was from the agenda, a certain size house and the request for an outbuilding that might be like another apartment or unit, but never any kind of drawings or anything of that nature were we able to find. Is that available?
that is available on our website, and the files are fairly large, so you may have some difficulty possibly downloading those if you were not able to see those or view them.
Yeah, when did they become available? I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't look in the last few days. I looked about 10 days ago when we first saw the notice go up on the tree or on the fence.
The notice was posted to our website, all the files, on Thursday of last week.
Okay.
And caller, if I may,
All right,
can you identify yourself for the record, please?
sure, I'm Doug DeVore.
Thank you.
So I could go ahead and ask some specific questions if you don't mind, the same ones I would like to have found from the plan, but we know from that lot line that there's a number of oak trees on that property, and we were wondering how many of those are planned to be either relocated or just cut down.
So we will be discussing this matter during the hearing. So right now we're taking public
Okay.
comment for items not on the agenda. but we will be
Okay,
opening up
great.
the.
My bad. I missed it.
Okay, so
I'll wait. Thank you.
that's the second item. Okay, thank you.
Fine, thank you. I'll wait.
All right. Was there anybody else for public comment at this time? All right, then I think we can.
There are currently no other callers at this time.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Pevsner, you're on a phone. I guess we would have to mute you on our end, but we're getting a lot of feedback.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's okay. I just need to know how to, I think I press star to unmute myself. I think I can just mute it. Work? No?
No.
No?
Yeah.
I guess you have to do it on your end somehow.
Yeah, I think as host, Vincent, you are able to.
Yeah, gentlemen, the only trouble is that if we mute him, we won't know when he's trying to speak.
Okay. You know what? I'll go to another computer that I have audio and video on one computer, and I'll re-sign in. So I'll temporarily leave and I'll come right back. That'll make it easier. Okay.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Commissioner.
All right, Vincent, shall we go ahead and I assume that staff has a presentation for us as we start to look at Hillside Development Permit 20-01 for 751 Oak Crest Drive.
Yes, we have a PowerPoint presentation that we will be loading up for you, and it will be delivered by Associate Planner Claire Lynn.
Good evening, Vice Chair and Commissioners. Planning Commission this evening will be reviewing a Hillside Development Permit 2001, replacing the modification to Administrative Hillside Development Permit 1702 for the property located at 751 Oak Crest Drive. The applicant is requesting the meeting is continued from the May 7th Planning Commission meeting, and the applicant is requesting to allow the demolition and reconstruction of the exterior wall and the roof for addition of 1,008 square feet onto the property. Pursuant to municipal code, any remodels of or addition onto existing legal primary structures shall be subject to the granting of a Hillside Development Permit. So to recap, the property is located at the top of Oak Crest Drive. The property is a 1.02 acre lot located in the Hillside Management Zone. Applicant has returned to address Planning Commission's concern regarding water supply sufficiency, fire flow capacity, and fire code and brush clearance requirement. So we have reached out to the water department and fire department to obtain the existing conditions. The current water pressure is at 85 PSI. That comes from a 10,000 gallon tank above, and the fire flow capacity at the street is at 230 gallon per minute. The fire marshal confirmed that the proposed project will have to rely on the residential sprinkler system for fire suppression and a vegetation plan to either remove or maintain the existing native landscape plan, proposed fire-resistant species, and the under-deck sprinkler system is not a code requirement. So the property has no active records of fire code violation on brush clearance. The second concern was the debris coming down from the hillside that impacted the garage. Commission has asked the applicant to provide remediation on the hillside stabilization. And the applicant hired a civil engineer to observe the condition and prepare a report to address the localized slope instability of the existing relatively steep slope. That the report recommended to remove the soil debris adjacent to the rear portion of the garage and construct a debris wall of at least 24 inches above the existing retaining wall. Also construct an erosion control device on the surface of the distressed area. And the third concern was the existing non-conforming status will no longer be in effect once the existing structure is demolished for the new construction. So the new proposed project height will need to be complied with the current development standard. Applicant has revised the second floor plan and elevation to be conformed with the building height requirement. The massing will be stepping back towards the hillside to be within the building envelope. Applicant also makes space for a 2-car garage to conform with the current parking requirement. So the proposed project is a repurpose of the lower floor and the foundation and demolish the exterior walls and roof for the first and second floor, revising the second floor and add 598 square feet. Also reconfigure the guest house to accommodate the 2-car garage. The primary residence is a 4,025 square feet with the new proposed garage of 577. The converted guest house will add 267 to become a new ADU. So the proposed project will remain designed in contemporary architectural style, using stucco walls, horizontal wood siding and wood decking, recessed aluminum class single pane windows, earth tone colors, and it will comply with low impact development plan. Applicant has to prepare a neighborhood analysis that conducted on the 35 properties within the 500-foot radius, excluding the vacant lots. The analysis indicated that the proposed 4,025 square foot residence is 484 square feet greater than the average top 1/3 of the neighboring homes. Here's the project information. The project meets the requirement on lot coverage, gross floor area, building height, setbacks, and parking requirement. Here's the site plan, shows the already graded area and the location of the proposed project. It will be rehabilitating the 2 structures on site, leaving the remaining property undeveloped. The applicant has also prepared a landscape plan that is showing the fire department requirement of a defensible space around the building, and existing vegetation or other type of combustible fuel type of vegetation will be cleared and replaced with fire retardant species. The project also complied with the water efficiency landscape ordinance. Here is the site plan, floor plan of the garage. You can see that the existing garage is a one-car garage, and the applicant has made space for the two-car garage and a storage, taking some of the existing guest house spaces. And the guest house will be expanding 267 square feet, removing the outdoor spa and the existing patio. Here is the elevation of the garage and the ADU attached to it. So the lower floor plan, this is the adaptive reuse of the foundation and the lower floor plan. The interior has not changed from the last meeting. This is the first floor plan, and it also remained unchanged. The only alteration from the last meeting was a new laundry room and a wine room, and changing an alteration of the staircase. The proposed second floor plans, the existing floor plan and the proposed floor plan, it has been reconfigured to accommodate a master suite, which include a bedroom, bathroom, closet, and open deck with a new vertical staircase. And it has, the massing has been pushed towards the hillside and added 598 square feet. Here are the sections, east-west section that cuts through from the entrance, and a north-south section that shows the profile, and the second floor volume has been shifted towards the hillside. A site section that cuts through the hill and show you the sections through the driveway and the hills behind it. Here are the color elevations. Elevation from the southwest elevation is the one that's facing the hill, and the southeast elevation, it's from the driveway side. You can see the front entrance and the volume stepping back. Here is the northwest elevation and the northeast elevation. Colors and materials that will be used for this project, they are primarily earth tone and dark gray colors. The exterior wall are finished with stucco in pewter color, and the wood cladding and sidings are in walnut color. Then they will be cable railing in dark gray color and window frame in dark bronze anodized aluminum. Here is the photomontage rendering of the front entrance. You can see the driveway and the new entrance. Here's the view of the southwest corner. You can see the deck and also the guest house in the back. Here are the renderings from the northwest corner. And this is the view from the east, showing the existing lower floor, the proposed deck, and the second story volume step back. So Hillside development permit finding has to be made in order to approve the project. Here are the summary of the findings. The proposed project is consistent with the general plan goals and policies to the Hillside development by continuing the use, the residential use of the existing pattern. Proposed development meets all the standards. Development has minimized natural hazard and maximized access to the open space as it is developed within the existing footprint, and the remaining site will remain undeveloped. The proposed project eliminates environmental impact and comply with design and development standard, where it is an adaptive reuse of existing foundation, and it will not alter the existing topography or grading. Alternative before Planning Commission this evening is to approve the application with modification, deny the application, identifying the findings that the commission feels cannot be made, and the basis for rejecting those findings, or continue the application and provide staff and applicant with direction. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the application for Hillside Development Permit 2001 pursuant to the Resolution 2008. That concludes my presentation, and the applicant is online if you have any questions.
Thank you. Before we go to the applicant, are there any questions from the commission of staff?
No.
No, I'm good.
All right, would the applicant like, sorry, Commissioner Pevsner, did you have something? Can't hear you. Still not able to hear you. You're off mute, but we don't seem to be able to hear you.
Commissioner Pevsner could always write his answer in the comments and one of us can read it out.
There's also the ability on the invite that we were sent, it has numbers you can dial in and you can associate your phone number with your name.
If you do dial in by phone, please be sure to use the participant code to join, to make that join happen.
Still can't hear you, sorry. He's going to type his questions. Okay. Would the applicant like to address the commission?
No.
Okay. Then we will bring this back to the commission for deliberation. Who would? Okay, so of staff, we have a question from Commissioner Pevsner. Were all the fire requirements met?
Yes, there are no active fire violations or brush clearance. And the existing condition at the street, fire marshal has confirmed that we should not impose that onto the applicant to enlarge a fire line. And currently the water department is working on the issue why the capacity is lower than expected. So they're still working on that.
All right, thank you.
Well, I would like to ask if I may. Vice Chair, I would like to ask then, um, if the pressure from a tank up above is is what we're talking about here, is there going to be is that pressure from the tank up above going to be down at the street, and then we pump the water back up the hill, or is there going to be a standpipe at the elevation of the building itself? I mean, what does this all mean to the project? I mean, wouldn't a statement on that be part of the fire department weighing in here? And I don't know what our obligation is to act on that, or whether it's going to be a fire department issue during plan check. I'm unclear on that whole thing, but it seems as though if there's a tank up above that you'd want to have a fire department connection, or at the elevation of the building.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you and synthesizing that right, let me say that back, that we would want to ensure that the fire department, the fire marshal has signed off that the ability to get water to the house from either the city or whatever else is required by code will be fulfilled as part of this.
Your fire department is very astute. We're listening to the whole discussion here. I'm not clear on whether this should figure into our deliberations or not.
The fire marshal, if I heard Ms. Lynn correctly, indicated that there should not be a holdup to development based on his findings while up there. Is that correct?
That's correct. The 85 PSI coming down from the tank above, the 10,000 gallon tank above, it's sufficient for the fire sprinkler system.
At the house?
Yes, at the house.
Okay. Well, I'd like to comment so apparently this is being done with recognition of pressure at the house. I should think that I'll just comment that I should think that the applicant would like to know whether a connection is going to be required up at that level, because it's a pretty costly item. But it doesn't sound as though it should interfere with our deliberations on the rest of the project.
All right. Who would like to lead off our deliberations? Who's in the center of my screen? It is Commissioner Desai.
Overall, I think it looks like the plan's been rejiggered a little bit, and doesn't look like they're saving a whole lot of what was there, which to me, as unique a structure as there is currently up there, I think this is by far an improvement, making that, rehabbing and sort of renovating and adding on to that structure. So one concern obviously was a fire issue, and it looks like that's been met to the satisfaction of the fire department. I think the erosion on the hill, I read the letter from the civil engineer. I mean, they did a cursory sort of observation, but it looks as if there's some remediation work that needs to be done on the back of the ADU garage structure on the wall. So it seems like 2 feet isn't going to do a whole lot, but that's the recommendation from the civil engineer. So kind of got to go with that if that's adequate or not. I question that, but that was addressed. As far as the overall project goes, it's within the height limit, and that's something we had asked for, you know, that they shouldn't get relief from having to adhere to that. And I think, you know, they've definitely sort of managed to move the mass of the project towards the hill and the garage structure away from the lower descending slope. So I think that's an improvement. Overall, I think it's, you know, I mean, I think it's a huge improvement. So I think they've checked all the boxes and the concerns that we had previously and addressed those. And I want to compliment the designer as well. I think the drawings were well executed, very clear. It's something we asked for time and time again from, you know, the architects and designers who come before the commission. You know, very clear drawings help make your case for you. And I think this is one of those instances where the drawings were very clear. The sections were great. And obviously the renderings help and tell you a lot of the nuances of the design. So I can make the findings, I can support it. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner Pevsner, why don't we see if your headphones are working?
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Oh, hooray. Okay, that's what. So, yeah, I think if the fire concerns were met, I think the design is advanced and met all the things that we asked for. So I think we need to be able to. I can make the findings to approve the project.
Commissioner Spears.
Yeah, the improved drawings were a big help. The changes that they made to the elevations of the roof and moving the massing back towards the hillside was appropriate and good. The fire findings are a good step forward. The planting information was another big step forward because, you know, currently that house is in a rather precarious position if there's a fire below it. So they have listened to us, and I think they've met the findings.
Thank you. Commissioner Catalano.
Yeah, I have no problem with the buildings at all. It's in such a remote location. I don't think that any of us are really going to, you know, look at it as the way we would if it were in the middle of a neighborhood. So that's all fine. I have no problem with any of that. But there's one big omission here right now. One big omission. And actually the letter from the neighbors and what I saw today at the site addressed this, and that is that while the slope site plan indicates that one area of mitigation around the garage, that partway down the driveway where there is that concrete wash that comes off of the hillside, and if the drain is working, it goes into the gutter and down the hill to the neighbors. And if the drain isn't working, it goes with a lot of mud down the hill behind the wall to the neighbors. And it very, very plainly is just emptying out onto the neighbor's property. There's no other place that it could be going. And so I don't know how anybody could be saying here that this meets requirements for LID. If LID is part of what we're supposed to be reviewing, then this is a very, very serious handling your water on your site and being able to dispose of it without it without it running off into the sewer system, and without doing potential damage to your neighbor, is a very serious issue, and it's been totally ignored here. And so I'm not going to vote in favor of the project until that's corrected.
Chair Hutt, if I can clarify.
Yes.
So the LID requirements and grading and drainage requirements will be reviewed during a plan check review by our city engineer.
Will you make sure, please, that this letter from the neighbors and the concern about the site drainage become part of what he reviews?
We can make sure that's included in our records for his review. Yes.
Okay, yeah, because it is potentially a very serious project on the outside of that driveway curve, and then there are actually some other things that should be looked at in terms of the slope going directly down from the building to the cul-de-sac below. So at plan check, Kev will be working on all of that.
Yes, he will.
Yep, okay, thank you.
All right. I guess that leaves me. I think that what came back before us was significantly more detailed, which made it really easy to see the work that had gone into it. As Commissioner Spears noted, moving the massing up and back is exactly what we're looking for. That was the appropriate thing to do, and they did that. I think that I can fairly easily make the findings on this. I will note, Commissioner Catalano, that this location has been deserted for quite a while, and I wonder if the reason that those drains haven't been working is that there's just been neglect of keeping them clean. But it sounds like that's one of the built-in conditions that will be reviewed as part of going through plan check.
You're absolutely correct about the neglect issue. There is at the bottom of that big swale there is a plugged drain. The only difference, Tom, is that with the drain plugged, the water and the mud runs down behind that retaining wall. If the drain is open, it only dumps into the gutter on the front of the retaining wall. Either way, it winds up in the same place, and that is right at the neighbor's property line, headed downhill at a steep angle. What I would like then is just that any references to there are a couple of references in here saying that LID has been met, and I would ask that not be on our record going forward, that those statements be modified or expunged and replaced with language about the city engineer's review. I don't think it should be on our record here that LID is fine. You're right. There's a lot of maintenance issues up there that really affect things.
All right. Are there any other comments? If not, then I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve it with any reference on the record that saying that we have approved LID be expunged. Otherwise we should approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we will move on to the second agenda item, design review permit. Oh, and I guess this is the part of the meeting where I have to hand over chair as he connects to audio.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right.
All right, now before you guys go too far, I need to recuse myself on this item. And I need to recuse myself because I'm just within that 500-foot radius apparently, or the 500-foot radius like nicks the corner of that site. But so the city attorney has provided me with how to recuse myself on Zoom. And I'll try to follow the steps here real quickly. But I'll be able to be listening to you, even though you won't be able to see me or hear me. And then I'll come back in once you've completed this item. So here we go.
Oscar, can you remove Joe Catalano from video? There we go. We also have the applicants online as well for the second item. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation, also Associate Planner Claire Lynn.
The second public hearing item this evening is for a design review permit number 2002 for the property located at 370 North Grove Street. The applicant is requesting that the Planning Commission consider a design review permit to develop the vacant lot and construct a 2,613 square foot, 2-story single-family residence with an attached 2-car garage and an accessory dwelling unit in the rear. Pursuant to the municipal code, a design review permit is required for any new construction proposed to include a 2nd story. Also, encroachment exceeding the angle plane height by more than 10 linear feet, by not more than 10 linear feet, may be allowed subject to the approval of administrative design review. Here is the vicinity map showing that the property outlined in red on the east side of Grove Street, north of Grandview and south of Fairview Avenue. The property is a 9,376 square foot rectangular lot in the R1 single family residential zone with the general land use destination of residential low density. The adjacent property to the north, east, and the south are also zoned R1. Photograph of the existing site. The property is a vacant lot. Currently, you can see it from the Grove Street view with the chain link fence. And the bottom photo is the view to the north from the property. Views to the west and the views to the west and the east, and the views to the south. And you can also see the existing oak on site. Project summary. The proposed project meets the requirement on lot coverage, gross floor area, building setbacks, and parking requirement. Except for the building height, the applicant is seeking Commission's review on the proposed architectural feature to exceed the building height and encroach into the angle plane. Here is a survey map of the vacant lot. And according to the Arborist Report, there are 10 protected trees on site occupying the lot, including coast live oak trees and a California sycamore tree. The 3 canopies with hatch in dash line are the ones to be removed. An Arborist report was prepared in 2009. Public Works has reviewed the report and approved the removal of the 3 oak tree with mitigation, and the remaining protected trees will follow the recommended measure from the Arborist report to install a protective fencing at the drip line during construction, and there shall be no grading within the drip line. Here is a conceptual landscape plan. The dark brown area showing the mulch area, and the rest of the vegetation are incorporating drought-tolerant plant species. And the lower plan are showing that it is divided in different hydrozone to comply with the water efficient landscape ordinance. The proposed grading and low impact development plan that it will be utilizing the best management practices and propose several locations of stormwater retention planters right here outlined in blue. Here is the site plan showing the rectangular footprint of the 2-story project and an ADU placed at an angle in the rear. The front yard setback is 27 feet and 10 inches. Side yard setback to the north is 7 feet, and the side yard to the south is 13 feet 9 inches from the south property line. The rear yard setback is 15. Here is the plan and elevation of the proposed ADU. That is a reclaimed boxcar anchored to the track. It was intended to reduce the impact to the protected trees, and it will be connected by a raised deck walkway to the main structure. The proposed first floor plan includes a living room, dining room, kitchen, powder room, a laundry, and a mechanical room with play slide or laundry chute with an attached 2-car garage. The stairs leads to the second floor, which includes 3 bedroom and 2 bath and a storage. Here is the floor plan showing the standing seam metal roof that continued from the exterior wall to the roof. The proposed location of the solar panel that is required by law, and the location of the mechanical room that is 7 feet 4 inches by 18 feet that is protruding beyond the roof that bisects the building. Here is the elevation of the proposed project. It is a 2-story modern barn designed in a modern architectural style. The street-facing elevation includes the attached 2-car garage, and the vehicular access is facing Grove Street. The proposed project is in the form of a gable house that has an efficient layout with 2 floors centralized around the 2-story utility room. This feature exceeds the height standard where it penetrates through the roof and encroaches into the angle plane that's shown here at the triangle. Staff expressed concerns with the mechanical structure exceeding the height standard and also encroaching into the angle plane. The metal garage door is also a prominent feature of the front facade. Given that this is a new construction on the vacant lot, staff feels there would be other opportunities to place the garage behind the primary structure or offset in the plane from the street facing elevation. The bottom elevation is a north elevation showing the standing seam metal roof wrapped all the way around. The east elevation shows roughly a 4-foot grade difference between south and the north property line where the building is set off center. And the south elevation with the exterior standing seam metal material cladding wrap continues from the roof down to the wall are tapered at the south elevation. Here are the sections showing the program is centralized around the utility shaft with a play slide or a laundry chute that access both floor. And here are the sections showing an option. In the future, it might be able to accommodate an elevator. The overall section showing the grade elevation on the side from the street to the rear line. And it's roughly 2.5 feet to 3 feet 10 inches from the west to the east. Here are the renderings of the overall massing from Grove Street. One is looking northward and the bottom one is looking southward on the street. Here are the materials that we'll be using for the proposed project. There's standing seam metal roof, CMU block, sheet metal siding, and smooth finish stucco wall, all in the combination with glass that is a metal clad window with bronze anodized finish frame. The color palette is primarily gray with an accent color front door. I also include a play slide in the picture of what it might look like. Here is the material that will be used to place the ADU on site. We will be using the steel railroad tie that will be installed on grade for the ADU, and ADU could be welded or mounted to the foundation. Design review finding has to be made in order to approve the project. Here are the summaries that the project is an infill development as a single family residence, and it is consistent with the low density general plan destination and zoning code. Project complies with the setback, lot coverage, and floor area requirement. And it is seeking relief on the maximum allowable height and encroaching into the angle plane. The proposed project will not unreasonably interfere with the use, possession, and the enjoyment of the surrounding properties as it preserves most of the existing tree on site along the south property. The height, bulk, and scale are compatible with the existing neighborhood landform and surrounding. The project reflects the scale of the neighborhood, which is not visually overpower or dominating the neighborhood and is not ill proportioned or detracts from the village setting. The project will unreasonable interfere with public view or view and privacy of the neighbor. The project has minimum window openings on the north or the south elevation to address that. The project exhibit coherent project-wide design and construct with high quality material with standing seam metal roof, smooth finished stucco, CMU block, and sheet metal apply on all elevation regardless whether the same or public visible. The project is seeking relief from development standard for additional height and encroachment into the angle plane where staff cannot make finding. And lastly, the proposed project of 2,613 square feet is below the size threshold and does not subject to finding number 8, whereas the ADU shall receive ministerial approval. Alternative before Planning Commission this evening is to approve the request for design review permit 2002 and direct staff to prepare a resolution or approve with modification or deny the request, citing the reason and finding for denial, or continue the project and provide directions to the applicant and staff. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission take the following action to continue the application for design review permit 2002. That concludes my presentation, and our applicant has a brief presentation as well. Mr. Kuroda, you can share your screen, or you just want to address the commission.
Does that work for everyone, or is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to do a quick presentation just to address some of the concerns that the planner had, and also to show some of the reason for our design. And by the way, my name is Michael Kuroda. I'm the designer and also the homeowner, so it's a design build project. But this is the first floor plan, and in the blue, you have the MEP room, which is the room that's kind of in question right now. And adjacent to it, you have the spaces that utilize all the utilities within this space. So we have a gray water system, a water filtration system, tankless water heater, and a wall battery, and we'll also have the HVAC within this area. And so this really helps with our efficiency, running plumbing, and giving us access to it. Within the MEP corridor, our plumbing will be visible along the wall, so we're able to improve anything we need or do any kind of repairs. Things like improving the gray water system. We could easily bring in new technologies and improve it without having to do any kind of destruction or improvements to the house. It's all contained within this one area. And on the second floor, you could see that we'll also be recycling the water from the showers and also the washer, and that will be part of the gray water system. And so this section kind of helps show how the corridor works. So the blue arrows are the HVAC. And so on the first floor, there's not too much space. It's just the kitchen and living room. So we don't need to spread these ducts too far. So we're able to have a lower ceiling framing. And then on the top, second floor, we're gonna have the HVAC go through, I guess, what we call almost like a really small attic space, but you can see in the next section, but it's able to go to the farther ends of the house, which are the bedrooms. And then the red arrows show the plumbing that would be able to be accessed through the MEP corridor to the bathrooms and to the kitchen. And so in this section, you can see how, once again, in blue, the HVAC access to the second floor on the top, and in the middle, you have quick HVAC access to the living room. And in the red, you also have the plumbing with the access in the middle to the second floor, and on the lower end to the kitchen. And then under the slide / laundry chute, you could see that the foundation is lower, and so that's for our future development. And we're considering doing an elevator in the future. A couple years back, my mother had a stroke, and so before she was able to walk with a cane, but within the last year, she's kind of been bound to the wheelchair. And so it's just something that we have in mind for the future, that hopefully things would get better, but we want to be able to plan for the future. And this is something we can do without having to do major renovations to the house. It's already fully encased, and all we'd have to do is remove the laundry chute, and we would still have the existing openings that we could utilize for this. And this is another section which also shows how we got the height limit for the gable roof. And on top, you could see this little, I guess you'd call attic space for the HVAC units to run to the bedrooms. And so the MEP room is made out of CMU block. And so it's something that we're trying to bring a language from the exterior view to the interior as well. So we have this cohesive language. And it also creates a nice focus wall on the different rooms, and it's able to connect the lower floors to the upper floors, and as well as the exterior, like I said before. And on the top, you could see that there's a structure right here where the MEP roof is. And so that connects to the gable roof of the house, and it structurally allows for a stronger lateral movement, or to prevent lateral movement in the house. And so that's one of the reasons why we have that. And there's just a small parapet wall, which is why it's higher than the gable roof house. And so this is the front view. And one of the concepts for this MEP room was that we're trying to pay homage to a regular traditional house. So it kind of mimics the idea of a chimney. So that's something that we're trying to consider. And right here we have the code that I'm not going to read verbatim, but it basically says we're allowed to have a space that goes over the roof limit to house things such as an elevator, tanks, ventilation fans, and other equipment, as well as the parapet wall to help maintain the building. And I believe the MEP room qualifies for all of that. And then as far as the material board, one of the main features that we have is the standing seam steel roof. And here on the 1.0, you could see that it's factory rated to be energy efficient, and it has an applied paint by the factory that has a solid reflectivity into it. So it's part of the ways that we're trying to be more efficient with our design. And as before, you saw this picture from Claire that has the lid planter boxes, and they're gonna collect all the runoff from the various roofs so that we can maintain all the water on site when it rains and not have any runoff into the street. And in this hydro zone that's highlighted, zone 1, this shows where all the recycled water from the gray water system will be distributed to the landscape. So combined with the planter boxes, we really have minimal excess water use for landscape. And part of this design being efficient, we're trying to do LEED certification. So you could see on attachment F more information about that. But as you can see right now, we're at 85.5, which is a gold. And we're actually only 4.5 points away from getting a platinum certification if we were to go with this design. Just to let you know that we didn't completely fill out all of this checklist. There are some areas that we still have to finish. One of them is the Title 24, and it's basically the percentage that you design your house above the minimum requirements of Title 24, and the maximum points are 19 for that section. So we're very close, and I think we could easily get to this platinum level of certification. And then the other thing I wanted to address was the garage, the prominence of the garage. And so this is a rendering that we have that doesn't quite show exactly how it would be, just because I was trying to show some of the house in the back. But as you can see from the front view, there's a lot of large trees that would really block the front view of our house. So I don't think the garage would be a big issue as far as an eyesore or anything. And this one tree in the front is actually on city property. So we'd obviously keep that, but we also want to keep the trees on our property. So right behind the fence, there's another oak tree that we're also keeping. And on the left, you have a view from the north looking south, and you can see that there's a big oak tree between us and our northern neighbor, which helps mitigate the view of our house from that direction. And from the south, there's about 3 or 4 oak trees there. So our house is really not prominent from the street view, so we don't think that the garage would be that big of an issue. And then just as a last slide for the survey, we just wanted to show that there's really not a lot of space to move the garage to another location like the back. If we're to keep all the oak trees, they need a certain setback so we don't destroy them. And then with a 10-foot driveway and everything, our house would be reduced to about 20 feet wide, which isn't really that reasonable. And we'd have to completely change the design because it's not a cookie cutter house. We can't just move the garage to the back. And also, if you look at the site plan right now as designed, we have about 23% hardscape on this design. If we were to have a garage in the rear with the driveway and everything, we'd be closer to over 50% hardscape, which I don't think is something that the city wants. You know, it's just going to create more runoff and less water being absorbed into the natural landscape. And so that's it, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
I've got a question for the applicant. You showed a slide, a section through your MEP core, and you showed all the functionality in the core. Above all the systems that you have, what is that volume? Why is that volume needed inside the core above the gray water? It seems like it's just empty airspace that you're capturing.
Well, one, we want to run the HVAC system up there, but it's also, I mean, it's a CMU block, so it's not like we could have it at an angle. It's a block wall.
Why do you need it that tall? There's no function. There's no function there.
Right, but we wanted to try and make this homage to making it more look like a traditional house with a remnant of a chimney structure. And it also continues the structure from the gable roof across, so then we don't have this lateral movement structurally.
So you're concerned about lateral movement?
Just within the MEP area, yes. We want to have that continuous roof.
Then can you also include for us maybe some information engineering on how you're going to keep the ADU to where it's placed? I mean, a building on wheels seems to like we'll move it around, and that will be a lot of lateral movement, especially for someone inside. But I don't see any engineering drawings that shows how it's going to stay in place.
You can lock the wheels to the railing. That's what they do at museums and all those.
I don't see any drawings that show that.
Institutes that do have those cars there, but I couldn't find the mechanism. But the car itself is able to move back and forth. It does. That's how it's designed. You know, it has springs on the car, and we're just going to lock it to the rail. But the car would, in an earthquake, move slightly back and forth. But that's how it's designed.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your choice of the block material, exposed block?
CM block. It's because, you know, a lot of the houses now, they use a fake stone facade, and I wanted to have something that's something strong like that, but something that's more functional, not just a fake facade. This is something that is structurally relevant, and it helps with the modern design that we have.
Can you tell me what the plate height is on that second story, what the volume is inside? Start at 7 feet and go all the way up to 17?
The top of plate for the second floor is 17 feet, 10 inches above the finished floor. What you're asking?
Thank you.
Why does it need to be that tall? Yeah, why does Lane, so I'm looking for reasons why it needs to be that tall to do that. I didn't see it in any of the documentation.
The elevations are on, or the sections are in the booklet on A 4.0.
Yeah, I see the elevations, but I didn't see a reason why it needs to be you need a 17-foot second story.
That's the top of plate for the second floor. The second floor starts at 10 foot above the finished floor of the first floor.
All right.
So then the second floor, the top of plate of the second floor is only 7 feet taller than the second floor. That's when the gable roof starts. And it
But
goes
all
up.
the spaces are vaulted, right? There's no ceilings on the second.
It's only vaulted over the living room space. It's a double height volume over the living room. The bedrooms have a little bit of a ceiling above them, which is kind of the, I guess, what you call the attic space where the HVAC is running through. Which is section 1 on A 4.0. Or in the long section, long site section, number 2 on A 4.1, you could see that how the ceiling is dropped over the bedrooms.
One other question that I have for you, obviously you're trying to get LEED certification. So, and it looked on your roof plan that you're adding solar.
Yes.
Did you consider the option of integrated or laminated PV since you're doing a standing seam roof? So it's integrated rather than putting panels on top of the roof?
We could consider that, yes. We just have, my father-in-law does solar for a living, so we was able to provide some of that for us. But that is an option I'd be willing to entertain.
Well, it seems like you're getting a 2-for-1. I mean, you're already going to a dark standing seam roof, and you can quote all the solar reflectance you want, but you know that thing's going to bake and get really hot. You might as well get something out of that. If you laminate the PV into those pans, you could march it along the entire roof, and you'll get, I mean, you can easily get a 5 kilowatt system. You probably can get even more. But then it's integrated into the pan, and so it's very seamless, you know, rather than planting these panels on clips on top of the roof, thereby creating almost a second roof.
That's a very viable option that I'm willing to look into.
I have a question with regard to the MEP room and the volume, and especially the way it plays into the structural rigidity that you were talking about. I understand why you couldn't make that angled, but is there a reason why you couldn't step it so that the part in the middle was taller and looked more like a chimney, and then step down? So sort of, I don't know if it would necessarily be, you know, half and half, but at some point you have one tall part and then another part that's stepped down and continues over.
Just to continue the language of the building, it has very clean lines and not a lot of step back. So we're trying to maintain that visual image.
But I mean, from you talked about the structural perspective, that the top of the roof of the MEP room tied into the top of the roof of the main house. And so if you did do that stepping, you would still be able to do that, right?
It would take a little more structural engineering as far as being to hold it up. We may have to use a little more steel, which I was trying to avoid. But anything is possible.
Yeah, because I think if you did that, it would read more like a chimney. I mean, obviously, you want it, the form factor, you want to read like a chimney, but it's obviously not a chimney. But which is, I think, sort of the cool part of it. But the fact that it's like half the width of the house sort of belies that it's obviously not a chimney. And so that's why I was thinking about if you stepped it, it would look more like a chimney. And to what Manish was saying earlier, especially on the sort of northern half of that room, the upper volume isn't really being used for anything. Whereas on the southern half, you know, you've got the HVAC in there and the potential elevator. So I can understand why you'd want the full height on that, but the north side, I didn't really see the purpose of that. So that was the question I had.
Yeah, it's kind of a cost-effective thing, just because if it was stepped, I would have to add some kind of support to do that, which would most likely be steel, which is kind of raises the price of it. So I was trying to be more efficient in the design and trying to keep the cost down with the overall design.
Okay.
Well, to add to that, is there a reason why that whole chimney stack couldn't just be dropped down?
Well, it's at the height of the building, just plus the little parapet wall, which is just helps for drainage. If it's something that's just the overall height, I could entertain like maybe grading the site more and dropping the whole house like a foot or something like that.
But why? Okay, anyway. There's no reason for that space that you have up there. You could drop the entire thing and still feed all your MEP and do everything you want that it's doing. I don't see any lateral issues. I don't see any of that flying. Like even if you stepped it, you can step it with the block. What would be the introduction of steel? I don't see any reason to introduce steel.
You have to have a member on the bottom to hold the blocks up. They can't just be free floating over that space. You need some kind of bottom support.
Is there any reason why it can't step and only be partially through that roof so that it doesn't go through the angle plane? So it looks from the front as if it were a chimney? Because like Mr. Desai said, it's an open volume up there. There's nothing in there. It's an empty space. And you want us to grant permission for you to invade the angle plane with an empty space. And what I want to hear is that why an empty space needs to have that permission. I mean, you could move the whole building to the south and not have to deal with this, or you could step it and not have to deal with this. So I'm kind of listening. I didn't see and I haven't heard any reason why an empty volume needs to have this kind of permission.
Right. I mean, the main reason it was a structural, cost-effective way to do it. But I mean, I could definitely move the house a couple of feet to the south.
It's a blank slate. I mean, it's not as if you were dealing with an existing structure or form that in putting on a second story, you have an architectural feature that violates the angle plane. We're used to that. Somebody wants to put up a chimney on the outside of a house and it goes through. That's not an issue. But you have infinite possibilities because there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. And you can move it any way you want to. So I'm kind of puzzled that because there's nothing inside that volume, why, I think you have a solution here that doesn't require a lot of, other changes.
Right. I mean, part of it was just my interpretation of the code.
It's not exactly a chimney.
Yes, but it also was talking about housing all these mechanical utilities, which.
And I'm fine with that. But it looks like what makes it so deep and so voluminous is that laundry chute. But I've been in many buildings with laundry chutes that are 2 feet by 2 feet, and they're a vertical shaft. So, I mean, I can't figure out why it has to have that huge volume that it does. Even with the elevator in there, it doesn't go past the roof line. I mean, I can still see that you want to take part of that, a square part of it, and make it go past the roof line to appear as if it's a chimney. But once it gets below the roof line, you could continue the roof around and no one would know. It would be invisible.
Right, and it only goes a foot over the gable house, but I understand what you're saying about the empty volume. But it does help us move the HVAC around and other plumbing.
Well, to that point, even on the HVAC, since you're probably well aware of all the high efficiency systems out there, especially if you're going after lead, you could have considered a high pressure volume system for the HVAC where your ducts are literally 4 inches in diameter, and you snake them through the framing basically, or right above the framing. You don't need a huge plenum to run, 12, 10, 14-inch ducts feeding all the rooms. You could even, for that matter, you could have, in a 2-inch line, you could have done a heat pump system for cooling and heating and ran everything in a 2-inch line, and that goes right through your framing. So you don't even need an attic space. So, I mean, you're saying you need these things for that volume, for this stuff. And then you're also saying we're being highly efficient and we're going after lead and we're only 4 points away from platinum. But yet there's all these things on the table that clearly haven't been thought through, because you can reduce that plenum space down to basically a 6x6 chase, and you can run all your lines through there, your line sets. So, I mean, I'm not hearing any good response to why that volume is necessitated for that mechanical,
Right. I mean, either way, to get past the other bathrooms and stuff, we're gonna have to run the lines above those spaces to get to the bedrooms. I mean, we can't run it through the wall. We can run it definitely through the ceiling in a smaller space, chase space for sure. But I mean, we can't just make, or I mean, it doesn't seem very efficient to make a wall have a 6-inch space so I can run ducts through the wall. That's why we have the chase going over in the ceiling space, the attic space. Because we do have the bathrooms in between the bedroom spaces.
Okay, thanks a lot. Do we have any other questions of staff or applicant?
I did have a question of staff on the tree report. It appears as if it was performed over a decade ago. How long are tree reports valid for before they need to be reperformed?
We had a conversation with Public Works, and they confirmed that the tree still could be removed. But I don't know if there's a specific correlation between when the original report was prepared and whether or not it still meets the requirement for removal. But it was reviewed again, as I mentioned, by James Carlson in Public Works.
I reviewed, like went out to the site and confirmed that the trees hadn't grown past the acceptable level, or just reviewed the report that was 12 years old?
He went out to the site.
Okay.
Hello? I wanted to ask about, well, two things actually. One, I wanted just to clarify what um, our ability to authorize a height, encroachment into the height in this area. And then the other thing was about an ADU. There is a seemingly unsolicited letter from some group in San Francisco. I'm just wondering how that affects us looking at this, approving this project. It has to do with the ADU in the back. It's more a question for staff.
If the director can answer the first one, I can answer the second one.
Yes, the code does allow for encroachments beyond the height that's allowed by code. If it is a architectural feature or chimney and other elements, as was indicated in the presentation by the applicant, as mechanical equipment. So the commission does have the ability to make that finding to approve or recommend a recommendation for approval.
Does that include stylistic changes? I mean, if it's an architectural change that we feel is essential to the style that we actually think fits the project?
That would be a determination by the commission, but yes, that would be an interpretation that could be made.
Okay, thank you.
So before Alex, you get started, if I can just clarify. So this is before us for both the angle plane encroachment as well as because it's a second story, right? So our standard design review criteria apply here because there's a second story. Is that correct?
Yes.
But just to clarify, it doesn't trigger finding 8. So it's findings 1 through 7 of our design review standards.
Bulk and massing is in 1 through 7, right?
Yep. Okay. Alec, you want to give us the answer to the second part of the question?
Yes. So the second part of the question asks about a public comment we received in regards to this project. The public comment cites the Housing Accountability Act and states that we have to approve it. We have to approve this project unless we make specific findings. The Housing Accountability Act specifically states that those findings only need to be made when the housing development meets objective general plan, zoning, and subdivision standards and criteria, including design review standards. In this case, staff has reviewed the project. We've concluded that it's not zoning compliant. Further, for the reasons stated earlier, that this project will go through design reviews and it will have to satisfy the different elements of the design review findings.
Okay, thank you. Did we receive any other public comment, or is there anybody who is online to testify on this?
You do have 2 callers waiting to provide public comment on this item.
Okay, can we hear from them then? That would be great.
Yeah. One of the callers is the caller from earlier. He waited around, and I will now let him speak on this item. Hello, caller?
Yes, hi. Okay.
Yeah, caller, please.
Hmm?
Sorry, just please state your name for the record and your city of residence, and then you may proceed.
Sure. My name is Doug DeVore. I live in Sierra Madre. So I have a couple, 4 or 5 bullet point type things I've made as notes and general questions. Now, I did get a chance to review the plans during the first home. So in general, questions I'd like to have answered include number of trees cut down because of the siting of the property and the way they've moved the house forward to make basically room for a very long accessory unit. Are they going to have to remove more trees than if they'd have done a typical normal, set it back a little further or do something else? So, because those trees are rare, and I know there's some in the middle of the lot, but it'd be nice to preserve them. Secondly, I'm not familiar with those additional units, but that house is right now very close to the curb. There's almost no curbside parking in front of that house because of the way its driveway is centered. So my question is, if somebody's living in that back dwelling, Where do they park? Do they park on the street? Do they park in front of our house, the neighbor's house? I live very close to this, I'm within the 500 feet, I'll tell you that. So, so where would those folks park? That was my second question. My third observation is it does have a lot of total mass at the street. It's big, it's tall, it's above the standards. And of course, as you're coming uphill, it looks even bigger because this is not a flat lot. So the homes do tend to look bigger as you're walking your way up the hill. Obviously, the mass of the mechanical area is quite enormous there, and sticking out pretty tall. So it does. There was a question: does it visually dominate? And it kind of does. It's not the same style as any home on the street, so that's a personal preference, I guess. But it does visually dominate. It's relatively close to the lot line. There's no windows on the first floor. It's just a very industrial looking building. And I appreciate the work that went into it by the applicant, but he took time to point out that the trees make it look better because you can't see it. But I got to be honest, if you got to block your house with the trees, maybe you're not quite integrated with the neighborhood yet. There was a discussion about, I should get an approval for the mechanical room because it's going to have an elevator. But I know it doesn't have an elevator. That's not part of what's being asked for. It's just saying, hey, in the future I might want to do it, which to me doesn't provide a reason that you would need a waiver now. And finally, one last question: living nearby, it's almost all metal. It's just going to cause reflection, light, heat loads on the neighborhood. Because it is definitely, it's going to, all that standing seam metal is going to push it somewhere else. And those would be my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another person for public comment?
You do. Good afternoon, caller. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. You will have up to 5 minutes to provide your public comment. We are currently discussing item number 2. You may proceed.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Rosita Koper. I live to the north of the property that is being discussed. My main concern is about the height of the house that is being proposed. Of course, I share that concern with everyone else. And my question for that first is, for a wall of that height, what is the code for the setback from the neighboring property? Because I saw on the plans that it is only a setback of 7 feet. I was wondering if someone can answer my question.
Is that your only question?
No, I also have a comment. Should I just proceed with
you should
my
just
comment as well?
Put all your questions and comments out there, and then we can respond after we close the public hearing. Thanks.
Okay, the second one is more a comment. I saw that it was part of the proposal. One of the points, I think it was something like, proposed project will not unreasonably interfere with the public view or the view and privacy of the neighbors. Where the house is located and with the height, it will be directly in front of 2 of our bedrooms. So I want to just voice my concern and say that I do not agree with that point of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that all our public comments then for the evening?
Yes, there are no more callers for public comment.
Okay, then I will give the applicant an opportunity to respond, and if he would like to try to answer any of those questions. No obligation, but if you want to, you can.
Yeah, I could try and respond to some of them. As far as the tree removal goes, the only ones that we're removing are the ones in the middle. So even if we were to do a different style house, those would probably still be removed, but we're not trying to remove any of the trees from the south or anything like that. The driveway is already an existing driveway cut, so it's just going to remain as is. So we're not trying to change that feature. And as far as the solar reflectivity, it's a paint that's built into the, or there's a paint that's applied, but it absorbs the light, so it's not reflecting it. That's why it has those solar ratings to it. So it won't be, it's a dull color, so you're not gonna have this giant light reflection, and it won't be pushing off a lot of heat. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna close the public hearing then and bring it back for deliberation. One question that was a technical nature for staff is the question about the setback. It seemed that in the staff presentation, the north setback was said to be meet requirements, but could we just review that and also discuss the angle plane so that we can address the question of the second commenter?
Yes, the code required setback requirement is 5 feet 6 inches based on the width of the lot. And the setbacks that are being provided are 7 feet on the north and 13 feet 11 inches on the south side yard setback.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's bring it to commission deliberation. Who would like to lead us off? Anybody?
Oh, one other question that was asked, and I think Alex can actually give us guidance on this, but if I recall from his presentation, parking for ADUs are specifically excluded from consideration. Do I have that right? You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to recall now. I believe that the ADU itself has to provide parking, if I'm not mistaken, but it doesn't have to provide replacement parking. But in this case, it's not replacing any structure. Is that right? That's what I recall.
It doesn't have to be covered though, right? So it could just be.
It doesn't need to be covered, correct.
I just wanted to answer that other question that had been brought.
That's a good catch. Thanks.
So to clarify, does that uncovered parking include a theoretically tandem parking in the front driveway? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Tom, you want to lead us off?
Sure. I think that there are a lot of really neat features in this this drafting of the drawing that we have before us. I think preserving as many trees as was preserved for this is great. I think it's a really clever idea on the ADU to reuse that. I am having a really hard time in finding any reason to break the angle plane. If there were any inkling of mechanical anything to put in there, I might be able to start to consider that, but I can't make that finding today. The other challenge I have with it is I agree with the applicant that the garage wouldn't work at the back of the property, though with a large property like this, that's where we like to see it. That, however, doesn't preclude the idea that we should see some kind of stepping of the bulk and massing. From the front, we have a huge, literally up to the code height of flat front wall, no articulation. The articulation of the sides, if there is some of the metal sticking forward of the plane, it's just, it doesn't visually break up the massing. The second story is literally as big as the first. And so I would love to see some way that gets broken up and stepped. The house to the north is a very large house, and so I'm less concerned with the size and shape fitting in with the rest of the neighborhood. But you know, even it must have taken you longer in your renderings to draw that house to the north with all its different and interesting parapets in the front than it did to draw out the front of this particular house. So I would love to see some kind of articulation or stepping of the massing. That's just, that it seems like a miss in this design. I love the concept. It's super interesting. Putting a modern house up there, I think, is always going to get people looking and thinking about new designs. But I'm having a hard time getting past those two items.
Okay. Anybody want to volunteer to go next?
I'll go.
Thanks, Bob.
So the first problem is with the angle plane. I mean, you've heard me say that. I mean, it's an empty space that you want to have permission to enter. That I see no. I understand what you're trying to do. The fact that all your mechanical stuff is in the center of the house, that's fine. But by the time you get it way up into the above the roof line, there is no reason to be there. And I think that if you stepped it, you could have it look more like a chimney and still do the function that it needs to do. Also, if you move the structure to the south another foot or two, you may be able to, sneak out of that incursion. I mean, I haven't heard a solid rationale on why it needs to be where it is. Also, if you move it to the south, it sounds like your neighbor to the north will be a little less anxious about your imposing onto her area. The second thing is I agree with Tom that I think what you want to do is you want to have a structure that looks like a giant garage for trains or something. It looks like a big barn. Yet the front of it, when you look at it from the front, all you see is a giant garage door. I mean, that's the statement you're making to the street and to the community. And I would like to see you break that up. Either, hey, if this thing is supposed to be some kind of barn, maybe look at a barn door kind of presentation to the front. I mean, it looks like you want to do something a little whimsical. Maybe incorporate that creativity. But right now, everybody that goes by this house looks at a giant wall with some windows on it and a big garage door. And if that's the statement to the community, it's not, I mean, it's very, very different than everything else on the street, but it also lacks a lot of, it doesn't invite a sense of community. And it seems to be harsh, and it emphasizes the bulk and massing of the building. It doesn't break up the bulk and massing. It doesn't, I mean, you can get a lot of forgiveness for your presentation if it's more interesting. And you can disguise a lot of how big it is by being clever. And the last thing is, I'd like to see an engineering drawing on the foundation for that ADU to know that I mean, we have earthquakes in Sierra Madre. Things move back and forth. You have a little old lady in that building and there's an earthquake and they get hurt, you're gonna hear about it. So tell me why it doesn't need some kind of traditional foundation. I mean, I'd like to know that for the safety of the occupant, that there's been some thought brought into this, and it's not just a display at a museum. Displays at museums, yes, they just weld them to the tracks or they just sit them there, but that's a museum, people aren't living in it. And you have a responsibility, if you're going to rent this thing out to whoever the person is that's gonna live there. And it's either a member of your family or someone else, and you wanna make sure that they're safe. So it's a safety issue for me.
If I could caution the commission regarding crafting conditions of approval for the accessory dwelling unit, that is not under the purview of the planning commission. This will be approved by staff.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you want to give us your thoughts next?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of agree with Tom. I think, and I like what the applicant's done to try and create, it's a difficult lot to deal with, and I like his efficiencies that he's built into it. But I kind of agree with Bob. I think there could be some, architectural cosmetic trees, which I think he's already gotten. And I bet if we just give a chance to come back with it, he'll come out with something even better. So now that he sort of hears it, and sometimes that, makes you, jog your creativity, which he seems to have plenty of. And I applaud him for that, because it looks to me, it's a narrow lot. It's very difficult to deal with. And I don't disagree with his efficiency of design. It's kind of like he's trying to build some off the grid in Montana, which, which is commendable for the city of Sierra Madre. We need to think more like that, I think. So more independent thinking. So anyway, I think he gets it. If you guys have anything else to add, I'm sure we can bring this back.
Okay. Is Peggy with us? I wasn't at the beginning of the meeting.
No, I'm
Nope.
on.
Okay.
I'm on deck
Manish?
here.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of comments I can make. I mean, I actually think the beauty of the design is in the purity of that sort of modern, farmhouse, Scandinavian sort of gabled profile, and you stuck to that, through thick and thin, from the front all the way to the end. But it, somewhere along the line, the desire for that efficiency of that MEP core has sort of become your North Star and interrupted. You have actually a really beautiful form, and you've stuck to the simplicity of it, even to the point of it may be too simple, as far as how it presents itself to the street. But that rectangle, the block rectangle, just bisects that. And I get all of the MEP, the systems efficiency that you're garnering out of that. But in the process, you've created an inefficiency of space. So you've got the efficiency of the systems, but an inefficiency of space. You're capturing space that's totally unused in there, and it sort of interrupts that entire flow of that mass. Is just this block in there. And I've got just some fundamental concerns with it. Is that side of the house, the north side, is the tightest setback you have, 7 feet, right? The south side, you've got 13 or 14 feet or whatever it is. And the house on the north, as the caller referenced, is they've got a 1-story mass. I don't know if it's a covered porch or what it is, but they've got a 1-story mass kind of against that property line. And you're presenting 7 feet away, which isn't very far. I mean, you can, if you pace that off, in your room where you are, it's not that far from a wall, and you're presented with almost a 28-foot tall vertical natural block wall. I mean, I'm sure that block wall is going to be beautiful, and it's going to be struck and scored every joint, and it's going to, you may even splurge and get burnished block and make it look really beautiful, but it's still going to be a 28-foot by however wide block wall that someone is staring at from the north side. And I just think that's really irresponsible. I mean, from a design standpoint, like that, I can't make that finding for that. There's no way in heck, like it would unreasonably interfere with my use, possession, and enjoyment of the surrounding. Basically, if I'm staring at that out of my wall, I mean, I'm out of my house, I would have a hard time swallowing that. So I think you didn't really present a good reason for that space. Like the part that's encroaching, there's no reason for that. I mean, the block can be stepped. There's a multitude of things you can do that I just don't see any reason for that. So I'm having heartburn with that. I commend you on the energy efficiency and striving for that. I think that's huge. I think that's great. But the creativity that you've shown with sort of the systems analysis and how you're managing all of that, I think that the architecture needs some of that too. I think you're missing some of that in that. So I think the choice of block, I mean, it's tomato. I mean, I'm a huge fan of modern design. I mean, that's what I do. for my clients, you know, and I love it, but I think that the house needs something more. It's just kind of, I think the simplicity of it is actually working against you in some respects. And I think the choice of block, you know, it's your choice, and I get that, and that's fine. But it's presenting, like one of the callers said, you know, it does look like a warehouse, basically, like an industrial warehouse. And maybe that's the look you're going for. That's fine. But I can't make any of the findings for that, the encroachment into the angle plane. So I think you need to revisit that and figure that out. I know we're not commenting on the ADU, but I actually think that's a great repurposing. I mean, the boxcar, I think that's beautiful. It's great. It's creative. It's sustainable. I mean, I think everything you're doing that, I think the house sort of falls short in comparison to that design move. I think, you know, I think that same creativity, as Bob said, needs to be sort of infused into how you form this house, the main house, you know, and how you deal with some of these things. And I know you can. It's not an issue. I just think you need more thought into that. And there really is no need to encroach. I mean, you know, that's the only reason you're here before us, you know, well, in the second story, but like, there's no need for that 2 foot 9 inch of encroachment. Like, you can totally make everything work that you're trying to achieve without that. So I'll stop there.
John, if I can just say something.
Yeah.
With regards to the idea of moving the house south, siting it further south so that it gets the angle plane incursion to go away, I would want some kind of an update on the 12-year-old tree report as to how far south that, if that's the way you choose to go. I would want some kind of an update on the tree report that's 12 years old as to how far you can really get close to those trees without endangering them. That would be my only comment if that is a way that you go. Thanks, John.
Sure. Okay, well, you know, I think this is a really interesting and funky house, and maybe not my cup of tea, but that's not the point of it. It's Sierra Madre, and we're supposed to have eclectic and interesting. I think that, you know, I don't necessarily share the concerns of some of the other commissioners of the bulkiness. I think there's a lot of bigger houses around. I also think that the issue of the garage is not so problematic to me because unlike the Stonehouse guidelines, we don't require the garage to be step back. I wouldn't be offended at all if as Bob suggested, there was a little bit more interesting, maybe farcical treatment of that. But that alone, the garage alone doesn't give me heartburn. The thing that gives me heartburn is the height and the angle plane. And in finding 7, we can approve finding 7 if the height is necessary to accommodate characteristics of an identifiable architectural style. And the problem here is that, you know, what is the identifiable characteristics of a modern architectural style? It's sort of, you do what you want. And we've also heard from sort of a mechanical perspective, there's not a real need for that. So, you know, that mass does give me a little bit of heartburn, and I don't see a reason why it couldn't be stepped. And I think it would look sort of more like a chimney that way, and hopefully avoid the angle plane issue altogether. And if that were done, I'd probably be a lot more comfortable finding 7 if it need be. I don't have any issues with the CMU. I think it's honest as opposed to the fake rock facade, so that's fine with me. I do think that it just makes sense that some of those issues be studied about, you know, how you treat that, whether you move the whole house south a little bit, you step the sort of MEP garage or chimney area, or some combination of that to get out of the angle plane. And then I think it would work. And while you're at it, some treatment of the front would probably help a lot of the other commissioners. But for me, I think I'm already there on that. So those are my thoughts. So it sounds for the applicant, it sounds like you've heard what the commissioners have to say. We can continue this, which is the staff recommendation. You do have a right to have us vote tonight. It doesn't sound like it would be approved if we did, but if that's your preference, we can do that, or we can continue it either to a date certain, so you could bring it back then, or to a date uncertain, but you'd have to renotice if we did that. So I'd like to get your thoughts on what your preference would be for us moving forward, and then we can make our motion and take action.
I'm assuming from the comments that I would not get a pass at this moment.
That's my assumption, but we have an official.
I'll be realistic with that. It's understandable. For another meeting with you guys, it would be, I guess, like a month or so, because you said they have to resend out the letters.
If we continue to a date certain, you won't have to renotice. So if we can pick the date tonight, we wouldn't have to notice again. We just need to give you enough time to study the issues that we've discussed tonight and make whatever revisions you need, and then get revised plans to staff, and then for enough time for them to review before the meeting. So it's a two-step process.
Yes, I would prefer that method of
So
a
we can
continuation.
continue the matter to July 16th, if that works with you.
That's fine. You said 16th?
July 16th.
16th, okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's the preference of the applicant. Do we have a motion from commission?
I move that we continue design review permit 20-02 to a date certain, July 16th, 2020.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Vincent, can you give us a roll call vote?
Yes. Chair Hutt,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dennison,
Yes.
Commissioners Catalano, Gallus, Desai,
Yes.
Hetzner,
Yes.
Spears.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries unanimously of those present. Next, we'll move on to our third item, and we can get Commissioner Catalano back.
So the third item is a presentation by Alex Garagosian regarding an ordinance amendment for the affordable housing ordinance.
Great, thank you, Director Gonzalez.
Back here.
So,
do we have, Alex, can you hold on a second? I want to make sure we have Joe back on before we start.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, you see me there?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
I'm back on. Thank you.
great. Okay, so at the last Planning Commission meeting, the commission had a couple of edits to make to the proposed density bonus ordinance. We went back and we made all the requested edits except for the following. We weren't able to award a density bonus for moderate income rental units. And we weren't able to do that because the code expressly states that these moderate income units must be common interest developments. We weren't able to award a density bonus based on a combination of different categories of income levels. And we weren't able to do that because another section of the code expressly states that you can't combine those different sections. We weren't able to award a density bonus for the donation of land located anywhere in the city because state law only provides us the option to do so up to a maximum, I think, of a quarter mile away from the project. Other things worth noting, we did identify that the homeowners' income information is protected under the Public Records Act, so we will be requesting that. That won't be made public if there's a request for it. We removed the provision that talks about preferential housing for Sierra Madre residents, city employees, and eligible persons. Upon further review, we thought perhaps there's a Fair Employment and Housing Act issue there. Usually, FEHA is used to prevent discrimination of individuals based on, it could be used to prevent discrimination based on a source of income. In this case, the city would be the source of income for individuals, so we wanted to remove that because it's subject to potential challenge. And it's just worth noting that a lot of the things that we took out of this proposed ordinance can be included, but because they're not part of Government Code Section 65915, which is the state density bonus law, we would have to amend our general plan, and that would require us to do some SQL analysis. So just to let the commission know that it's not impossible to change some of these density bonus requirements the way the council has suggested. It's just that maybe we'd have to create a separate zone and have those separate density bonus incentives created for that specific zone, which is, for at least for today, outside the scope of what we're trying to do. So with that, I can turn it over back to Chair Hutt. I know Chair Hutt had certain amendments he'd like to propose for this ordinance.
Okay, does anyone have any questions of staff? Okay, do we want to, what's the preference on people? Do we want to go through section by section, or do people just want to talk about any comments they have? I've got 3 different comments. 2 are sort of cleanup. 1 is a substantive one. So anybody have any thoughts?
Probably just outstanding comments, if people have them, would be the right way to go. I don't know that we need to flip pages.
Okay, sounds good. I'll start. The first comment I have is on section 1743030C, which is the section that deals with who reviews that. I have some language changes there, which I emailed to Alex, and basically we have another section in 1760058 that sort of deals with this. So I just did some cross references. I can read that if people want, or we can just move on. I take that as a move on. And then near the back in 1734110, where there's the issue of what the affordable units have to have. I'm trying to find out the exact reference because I just printed out one page. There's a section that says the affordable units must include all unit types represented in the project. And I think that language only really works for big projects, because if we have a project that has 5 units in it and there's 1 affordable, that 1 affordable can't be all the different unit mixes. So I propose changing that one to say affordable unit types shall be provided in approximately the same proportion as units in the project as a whole. And that way, if somebody has a 5-unit project with 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms and 1 affordable, it could be either one, and that seems to make sense to me. I sort of figured those would be pretty non-controversial, but does anyone have any concerns?
No.
No.
Okay, then the substantive issue I had is in the actual density bonus itself, 1734040A. These are the tables, and we talked last time about combining these, and apparently state law won't let us do that, and I think that's supremely stupid for a state that wants to encourage housing, because they're making a huge artificial barrier to the utility of this section, but it is what it is. So my thought is that, as we discussed, it's going to be very difficult to get very low income and lower income units. And I would like to see an increase in the density bonus on those sections above what state law requires as a minimum. and that would perhaps get us some of those. I think really we probably only get those if we subsidize in any event, but it might be that we get a project, you know, that could include one or two and help us meet some of our arena numbers. So one of the things I noticed on this table is that on the first tier of each one, the bonus is higher than as you go up. So for instance, if you look at table 2, you get a 20% bonus for having 10% low income units. But then when you go down, it's only a 35% bonus for 20% of low income units. And if you had the same math, it would be 40%. So my thought is that for table 2, we would just keep that ratio the same, being basically doubling, and go from 10 to, so 10% becomes 20%, 15% becomes 30%, 20% becomes 40%. And then there's the same issue with very low income, that it doesn't maintain the same proportionality. But I would also like to increase this one a little more on the hope that we might actually get some. So right now you have 5% very low income units gives you a 20% bonus. That's basically 4 times. And I think if we move that up to 5 times, so 25% bonus. So it would be at 5%, 25% bonus, at 8% a 40% bonus, and at 10% a 50% bonus. That's my proposal. I think that might actually achieve us having a few of those units, but maybe not. But at least it's a better shot than the numbers that are there now.
Are these numbers, Alex, based on any statutory requirements?
Yeah, these numbers come straight from state law.
So if are we increasing in a way such that we're exceeding the minimum requirements?
Correct. We are exceeding the minimum requirements which we're allowed to do.
But we can't go less than what's required by state.
Right, and we can always, like we'll have to do actually, I don't know if, I probably didn't I addressed it in my staff report, but I didn't address it orally. With respect to the senior housing, what we did is we decreased the threshold, and as a result, we have to provide some kind of decreased, we can still provide a bonus, but it has to be less than what's currently allowed under state law for 35. So if you all remember, 35 units was the minimum number of units you have to have in a senior housing in order to qualify for a 20% density bonus. Collectively, we had decided last time that we're going to reduce that to 5 units as opposed to 35, because we don't really get 35 senior housing units in Sierra Madre very often. Now, as a result, since we reduced it from 35 minimum units to 5 minimum units, we have to reduce the 20% density bonus by some percentage as well.
Wow, I don't understand if it's based on a percentage of units, why do we have to reduce it? Because 20% of 5 is 1, versus 20% of 35, being 7. It seems like it automatically reduces.
Right. So I'm taking this language from the Government Code section 65915 subdivision N, states that if we are to grant a proportionally lower density bonus than what's required by state law for developments that do not meet the, it says a density bonus greater than what is described in state density bonus law for development that meets the requirements, which we can grant, or we can grant a proportionally lower density bonus than what is required under state density bonus law for developments that do not meet this requirement. So in this case, the 5 units do not meet the development requirements under state law because state law requires 35. So as a result, we have to provide a proportionally lower density bonus.
So it can be any proportion. Can we say 19%?
Yeah, usually, I mean, this provision makes a lot more sense when you talk about the income-based bonuses, because those you can determine a proportion. In this case, yeah, I think it could be anything less than 20%.
Could we? Okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't we why don't we table the senior housing for a second, because that's sort of a different issue. And let's talk about the straight density bonus and decide what, as a commission, what we want to do there. And then we'll tackle the senior.
I think if we're going to have truly mixed neighborhoods, and if we're going to actually truly be an inviting community to people who of all incomes, that we should do whatever we can to encourage it, because I don't see, our housing stock is quite expensive as it is now. I don't see a lot of people deciding that this will pencil out unless we give them an incentive to do that. And even with that incentive, I think you are correct that the city's going to have to kick in something. So I'm okay with increasing the bonuses.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think at the minimum, we should make it proportionally correct. Like John, you were saying, if at 5 it's 20, then at 10 it should be 40. So that's step one. But was there any thought to, I know why you did the very low, like just bump it all up so it's 25 and 50, you know, as you move up the scale. Was there any thought to doing the same thing with the lower income units?
My thought was it's the hardest thing to get is the very low, and so we wanted to provide a bigger incentive there. But you know, we could adjust that as well. I haven't seen other cities do more than a 50% on mixed income, but I'm sure there probably are some. So that's why I sort of figured that 50% was the threshold we wanted to top out at. And so that worked out, the math worked out on the very low income to just bump that up to, 5 to 25 and 10 to 50. But, we could do that for low income as well. I think sometimes some of the second units, we count those for RENA as low income. And so for our RENA numbers, we do actually get some lower income and some moderate income. But we haven't, Vincent, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've gotten any very low income. So my thought was that those are the places where we really need to provide the biggest incentive.
Yeah, guys, if you look at the big picture of what's going on with urban planning right now, while we have pretty high land costs here, that we also have a continually weakening commercial area, real estate wise in the city, and it may be that the thing that makes any of this work at all is being able to for a developer to be able to combine this with a commercial building downtown, so that it helps float the residential project, like a commercial first floor, residential second floor. So and that's probably, if the current direction continues, it may actually be that we are going to wind up with a lot of what is now presently commercial being the only viable redevelopment space for housing of any size in the city. So it may be that that's really the magic bullet that gets us something. There's only so much that we're going to stretch these numbers otherwise.
Right. One thing to keep in mind on that, Joe, is that the commercial area of downtown is covered by Measure V, which limits residential density and allows for state required density bonuses for affordable housing, but does not allow us to do more than the state required minimums. So if we did change any of these density bonuses, it would be applicable to areas only outside Measure V, and the state minimums would be applicable inside the Measure V area.
So I don't know how that would, what that would look like, in practice.
Well, for instance, if we did the you know, the suggestion I did on for very low income, for instance, if you had 7% of your units very low income, that would mean you would get 25% density bonus in Measure V and 35% density bonus outside Measure V, which is effectively the R3 zone where that would play out.
Yeah, so it would put a limit on what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. We would, in other words, we would have to be able to modify. Measure V could only be modified by another vote of
That's right.
the public.
Yep.
Right, thank you.
And if I could just add, the city council will be considering or reviewing for discussion, and that will eventually come to the planning commission, opportunity sites with increased densities within and outside of Measure V. But what we're looking at, we're showing both 20% as well as 30% dwelling units per acre within Measure V.
And that's to comply with the housing element.
That's correct.
Requirements. Yeah. And I think one of the other issues with trying to provide an affordable bonus that's higher than required by state law is that we're going to have a hard time meeting our RENA numbers no matter what we do. And this shows the state we're at least trying. So I think that might help us put us in good graces for some things where we're going to have a hard time, as Vincent was saying, identifying enough opportunity sites. So, okay. So is that consensus then on that recommendation, or do people want to modify it, or what?
I'm good with it.
Good with it.
Okay, let's talk about the senior housing thing then. So the issue there is a senior housing project with 35 units has a 20% bonus. And if we go under 35, we have to have a lower. Could we raise up the percentage for the higher and then keep the 20%? In other words, can we have a senior housing project that has 5 units to 34 units have 20%, and then 35 or more have 25%?
That's a very creative idea. Yeah, I mean, technically you're complying with the spirit of the law. I think it makes sense.
I don't see we're going to get another senior housing project with 35 or more units, you know, unless the city dips in its pocket, because those don't happen of their own accord. So
on the other hand, John, it may be that there's also going to be a bottom to that, a minimum too, if there are particular requirements like managerial requirements for a senior housing project. Then there may be a minimum that makes sense to any kind of a provider or developer too. I have no idea. I have no idea what that is, but it seems as though a 5 unit mom and pop senior housing development is much less likely. So I'm wondering what a reasonable bottom on that might be.
Chair Hutt, I take that back, because it says we can grant a proportionately lower density bonus than what is required by state density bonus law. And if state density bonus law requires a 20% bonus for 35 units, then I think we need to be below 20%.
Okay. This is a state law, just again, that's supposed to encourage housing, and there's all sorts of rules around it that discourage us from doing so. So, but obviously we need
to because we know our village better than the state does. That's why.
That's a good point. So well, there we go. What do we want to do for the senior housing between 5 and 34 units?
Well, it has to be proportionally lower, right? So is it?
But it's not an issue of, I mean, the problem with proportionate is they're both 100% senior, right? So wouldn't a proportionately lower still be 20%? because it's not proportionally lower. That code that you're reading out seems to be tailored more towards the affordable housing as opposed to the senior.
I agree, and I see your point. And I think you want to, so what I'm hearing is I think you want to fix it at 20%, correct?
I'm fine with 20%, but I also don't want to do, I don't want to trailblaze the law and put the city in jeopardy, legal jeopardy over it either. And if 19% makes us feel
become famous.
Your suggestion was ratchet the 35 higher. And
yeah, so we could put 20.
20 for the 5 unit, right?
Right.
And the law says you cannot give a greater bonus
than 20, which is counterintuitive.
Right, Alex, that's what it says, right? You cannot assign a higher bonus percentage to the 35.
What the baseline is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I see your point, Chair Hutt. I think we can probably make that argument. And I'm not worried about the state contesting this. My concern is if residents don't want a density bonus to be awarded for a project. But I mean, I think there are grounds to keep it at 20% too.
I mean, my preference would be, from a policy perspective, to keep it the same percentage no matter the number of units, because it's 100% senior project, so it should have the same bonus. That seems logical to me.
Why can't we bring some levity to this, and like, what's better than 20? 1995. So 19.95%.
Which you round up, right?
You got to stop messing with the bureaucrat.
Okay. We need to decide.
I don't want us to break our back on it. So if it's possible, that'd be great. If it's not, then
why don't we leave it as it is and ask staff and council to review it before it goes to the city council and get comfortable that they think that's a defensible position.
And what we can also do is we can ask HCD directly to see if they have any comments about it, and if they do, then they can let us know if it's not permissible. If they don't, then
that's a good idea, because you'd think that the state would want us to make it easier to provide housing, not more difficult. Okay, anything else? Well, I will entertain a motion to recommend approval with the corrections noted.
Also move.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call vote?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Vincent. He'll figure it out eventually.
Okay, why don't we do this ourselves? I vote aye. Who's next?
Aye.
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 Yeah, aye.
That is unanimous. Fabulous. That's the end of our public hearings, and we will then move on to do we have another opportunity for public comment? Is there any public who wants to address the commission? I take that as a no.
You don't have any callers for public comment at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we will move to commission reports. Does anybody have anything to report?
I have nothing.
I have something.
Oh, you do? Go ahead.
Since this is Manisha's last meeting, I really want to express how grateful I am for all of your knowledge and input, and how smart you are as you provide insight to the applicants. Your vocabulary and your command of all things architectural was truly a gift to this committee. We need more people like you, and you will be sorely missed. And if we didn't have coronavirus, I would take you out for a beer.
Well, maybe we'll get them back when the restrictions are lifted. Manish, I didn't realize until just now that this is your last meeting, and I just want to add my thanks. And you've been very, very interesting for me to work with. You've added an awful lot to what goes on here, and thank you very much. And I hope we will catch up for a beer.
Yeah, Manish, you really have a way of speaking with the applicants and being able to translate into words what we can see but can't say sometimes. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to add my 2 cents onto this. I totally agree. And I think as a commission, we are going to miss you quite a bit. I think not only did I enjoy serving with you, I learned a lot from your comments. And I think more than anything else, I want you to know, I think this town is going to look better because of you. And I just thank you.
Well, I'd like to chime in too, Manish, because I remember just interviewing you when, can't believe it's been that many years now. Jeez. But just thanks for everything you've done. You've been a tremendous addition, and you've served the city very well. So thank you.
Staff concurs with all the commission's comments as well, Manish.
Thank you guys. It just dawned on me about a few weeks ago, and I said, oh wow, June 30th is approaching. So this is a prime example of time does fly. I don't even know where 8 years went, but I feel indebted to all of you guys. I too learned a lot from each and every one of you, and some of the other commissioners who are not on the commission and have cycled through. But I think we've done a lot of good work, and I was thinking back on the 8 years. There's a lot of things that we've discussed and went through, and it's just been a real privilege and honor to serve with you, fellow commissioners. And I hope the town is better off with the service that we provided, and looks a little more beautiful than it did yesterday. So so thank you. I'm gonna miss my time here. I'm not gonna know what to do with my Thursday nights, my first and third Thursdays anymore, but I probably will. I've heard from a lot of residents, it makes for good reality TV, so I probably will be watching or zooming in or whatever it is. I may find myself back, so we'll see. But
we'd love it.
Pleasure. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to staff reports.
So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to encourage the commission to listen into the June 23rd City Council meeting. There's going to be a discussion regarding the opportunity sets for the housing element. And also we talked about at our last meeting whether or not we were going to be canceling the June 2nd or July 2nd council mission meeting. Right now, I do have a couple of items on the agenda. They're not projects. One's housing-related bills in the legislature. It'll be a presentation by our Assistant City Attorney, and also continuing on with our discussion for design review findings.
What do commissioners think? Are people going to be available?
I am 50-50 for that meeting.
I got nowhere to go. we're in a coronavirus. So yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be around.
Hey, one of the things is if we don't have any projects, we could just schedule it, and if we fail on a quorum, it's not going to set any applicants back. So maybe that's the best course.
Had there been guidance given that if we didn't have anything that was calendared, that we weren't supposed to be meeting? I thought I'd remembered that.
You mean any projects?
Any projects that were calendared that we were supposed to?
That was a direction from, I believe, our city manager. At this point, we are looking at moving some of our ordinance amendments forward. And so this is posing an opportunity for us to get a head start on this.
I think we need to do the city's business. So I'm fine with meeting.
And we don't have any COVID related issue with this. However, did I hear correctly that we still have more housing bills from Sacramento to come?
There's always more housing bills from Sacramento to come.
There's a package right now of, I believe, 5 bills that are being considered. So stay tuned.
We could just put on the agenda a standing item, housing bill report.
Why don't they just give us the designs and get done with it, for God's sakes?
Just look up Tough Shed.
That's your go-to, huh?
Some cities do have fixed ADU designs.
I wasn't serious about that, Vince.
Okay. It sounds like we're on for July, was it the 2nd? Right?
Yes,
Okay. Anything else?
that concludes staff's report.
Okay. Well, with that, I will adjourn the meeting until our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 2nd. Talk to y'all then.
All right. Good night,
you.
y'all.
Thanks, Manish.
Thanks, Manish.
Yep. See you
Thank
guys.
you, Manish.